Hello! Welcome to the Polyglot Files. My name is Michael and today we're doing a video about language lessons. You may have noticed that this channel has been a little quiet lately. And that's because I started a new job. Some of you may remember that I was in teachers college up until last spring. And recently I took a 3-month contract teaching French in an elementary school before I take off for 6 months to go backpack Southeast Asia. But that's a topic for another video. Throughout the past couple months at my new job, I have had a perspective on language learning that I've never quite had before. While I've always taught languages one-on-one in a tutoring session, I've never taught languages to an entire group of students. In fact, teaching in a classroom is completely different, and I am responsible for teaching French for up to 110 students per day. I'm not exaggerating. The marking I have to do is astronomical. Because of all this, I have been thinking about how people of all ages learn languages in a language class or a language lesson, and I have compiled a couple tips for how to make the most out of your language learning lesson. Tip number 1, take good notes. Now this first tip might be a little bit controversial in the language learning community, but I stood by it as a language learner, and I definitely stand by it as a language teacher. I can't tell you the number of times I've had to repeat instructions to a student, or the amount of times I've had to review a grammar or vocabulary point that I've already reviewed. We could have avoided the whole revision conversation if somebody had just taken good notes to begin with. Now, I'm not saying you should spend a whole lesson with your face down in your page taking notes instead of actually paying attention. And in fact, there are some language learners and some language influencers in the polyglot community who will tell you not to take any notes at all, that you should instead focus on immersing yourself in the language and the content of the lesson. And I agree with that to a certain extent. However, the problem with not taking notes plays itself out in the long term. The human brain isn't so good at remembering information, especially if it's only encountered it one time. By taking notes, you can review often and give your memory a boost. Now, before everybody gets all upset in the comment section, just remember, taking notes and taking good notes looks different for everybody. Just look at mine. It's really just concise grammar points and vocabulary lists. That's really what all my class notes look like. In fact, you can see that your notes don't have to be super detailed. They just have to be something that works for you. I think there's a doggy. Poncho. Poncho. He's a doggy. Oh. Doggies make YouTube videos so much better. And I guess brothers are okay too. Hi. Tip number 2. For how to get the most out of your language learning lesson. Digest the material in a way that works for you. Now this tip goes hand in hand with the first tip. In addition to writing good notes, make sure that you're able to digest those notes and digest the material from the lesson in a way that makes it meaningful for you. This should happen both during the lesson and once the lesson is finished. For example, I know that I learn a language best by listening to the language and by actively using the language. That means that during the lesson itself, I make sure that I am sitting close to the teacher where I can hear clearly without any distractions. That also means that after the lesson, I make sure that I write something in my target language about the lesson topic, maybe using the vocabulary or the grammar structures, or I talk to myself. By now, as a language learner, if you're not talking to yourself in your target language, are you even really learning a language? By using the lesson material actively, once the lesson is done, it allows that information to move into my long-term memory, which makes it easier to access later on when I'm potentially in a real-world conversation in my target language. And again, this material digestion doesn't look the same for everybody. For example, I hate flashcards. They bore me beyond belief. There, I said it. But if that works for you, that's great. Take it with you on your language learning journey. Tip number 3 for how to make the most out of your language learning lessons. Find awesome lessons. In my opinion, a half-hour lesson with a great language teacher does way more for your language acquisition than 5 hours of fruitless self-study. Self-study is great. I love studying by myself. I find it to be an enjoyable experience. However, some of the most productive experiences I have had in language learning over the past year have been in a great language class. And most of these classes have been with Lingoda, the sponsor of today's video. You may remember that I did a video back in the summer about the Lingoda Marathon, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about something a little bit different, the Lingoda Sprint. Basically, the Lingoda Sprint is the fastest way to make progress in a language, and the value is unbeatable. You can get a 100% refund on your language lessons with Lingoda if you complete the Lingoda Sprint promotion. The sprint is simple. Attend 30 lessons per month for 3 months and receive a 100% refund on the money spent on those lessons. Can't commit to 30 days of lessons? You can then attend 15 lessons in a month period for 3 months and receive a 50% refund. You can take lessons in English, German, Spanish, French, and Business English, and you can do these at any level, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. As I mentioned, back in the summer, I took intermediate German lessons, and they were fantastic. I was in a small group with 2 to 3 other learners and an experienced native speaker of German who led us through the lesson. The lesson was based on the Lingoda created curriculum, meaning that they followed a logical order and the lessons I took built upon one another. I got lots of one-on-one time with the teacher as well as interacting with the other language learners, and there was a plethora of material that I could download to assist me during the lesson and after the lesson. This included lesson notes, PowerPoint slides, and even homework assignments to help me build upon my skills. At the end of the lesson, I even received lesson notes from the lesson instructor, who told me specific things that I could work on and different ways that I could improve upon my skills. If you're interested, the Lingoda Sprint starts January 7th, 2020 and ends April 5th, 2020. For sign-up details, check out the link in the description box. The deposit is taken off the first month of lessons, and then that deposit and the remainder of the money spent is then refunded if the learner completes the sprint. Keep in mind, however, that if you are putting down the deposit, you are committing to the 3 months of the sprint. Aside from my overwhelmingly positive experience with Lingoda, over 20,000 people have participated in the 6 previous Lingoda marathons. You can check out Lingoda's Instagram for stories from participants as well as the impacts that Lingoda has had on their lives. If you're interested, follow the link in the description and get a €10 discount on the Lingoda Sprint deposit today. Alright, that's all I got for you today. Don't forget that you can check me out on social media. I have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And as usual, thank you for watching the Polyglot Files, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!